and welcome to the New Weavers Workshop. We are so glad you've decided to join us, and we can't wait to get started weaving. We decided to put together a quick video for you. This will be about 30 minutes. You're going to meet each of the instructors. We'll tell you a little bit about ourselves and about the type of weaving that we'll be teaching, and we'll show you a little bit about the equipment you'll be using and go over a little bit of terminology so that when we get together we can jump right on into weaving. In the workshop, we're going to be exploring 3 different types of weaving: tapestry weaving, rigid heddle weaving, and multi-shaft weaving. Each one of these different types of weaving will use a different type of loom, from a very simple, small frame loom that easily fits in your hand for the tapestry, to a slightly more complicated loom in the rigid heddle loom, to the very much more complicated, or at least complex looking, multi-shaft looms, including our largest loom that we'll be using, which is about 42 inches wide and can weave a really wide band of fabric. Each one of these looms and techniques for weaving has a different potential for exploring color, texture, and pattern in your designs, and that's why we've decided to explore all 3. Our single biggest objective for you in this workshop is to be able to dive right in and experience weaving without a lot of the cumbersome preparation that needs to take place. So we've already warped up your looms for you. They're all ready to go. We've selected fiber that explores a range of possibilities: thick yarn, thin yarn, fabric, ribbon, different types of fiber, all kinds of different things so that you can explore possibilities. Where you're using patterns or cartoons, as it is in the case with tapestry, we've selected things that are fun and interesting and not as hard as they look, so that you can experience success and try out techniques that look really fancy but that can easily be mastered in the 3 weeks that we'll be together. And best of all, we have 4 instructors, so help is always close at hand. When you need one of us, there'll be somebody nearby. So what follows is going to be an introduction by the instructors. First, you'll hear from Mina and hear start to finish about the tapestry segment. And then my name is Bonnie. Buffy and Claire and I will jump in and each do an introduction to let you know a little bit about ourselves. And then we'll follow with an exploration of the equipment, tools, and fiber that you'll be using in class. On behalf of everyone, welcome to the workshop. We can't wait to start weaving with you.
Hi, my name is Mina, and I love to do tapestry weaving. My weaving is usually just small scale and inspired by Alaska in all of its many wonders. And one of the things I love about tapestry weaving and new tapestry weaving students is the fact that although it takes years and years to perfect your tapestry weaving, a beginner can jump in and create something that is just really can be stunning. And I have seen several students recently who have had some incredible work. So imagine what you can do with practice. So what is tapestry weaving, or what makes it different from the other kinds of weaving that you'll be learning on the rigid heddle and on the floor loom? Well, in order to tell you about those differences, we need to define some things first. And the first thing that we're going to look at is the type of loom that we use for tapestry weaving. Now this is a small tapestry loom, and one of the things that tapestry needs is a lot of tension, and the loom needs a way to tighten these vertical strings, and we have it here in this little screw there. So these vertical strings are called your warp. It's usually a cotton, very highly twisted and strong twine. It's called your warp. The fiber or the yarn that we put across horizontally is called your weft. and that can be wool or silk or cotton. And these yarns generally do have different characteristics than yarns used in wearables. So we have our warp and our weft, and I will tell you that tapestry is defined as a weft-faced discontinuing weaving method. And that means that the weft-faced means that you're just seeing the weft yarn. When I hold this up here, you can see that the warp in this case was kind of a beige color. You cannot see that beige warp through these colored weft yarns. And the discontinuous part of the definition means that you're not going back and forth across the width of the warp with the same length of weft yarn. So you can see here, we can change colors here, change colors here. So the fact that it is discontinuous allows us to build images. And so tapestry weaving is basically, I would say, an image-based weaving method. And those images can be realistic, very realistic in some cases, and they can also be very abstract. And I would encourage you to look at the American Tapestry Alliance website. They have a ton of artists' web pages, and there are some just incredible weaving images on that web page. So back to our little loom. We had the warp, and we're going to cover that warp with weft. And how do we do that? Well, we're going to go across, and generally in tapestry weaving, you're going over, under, over, under, over, under on one pass across. On the returning pass, you will go the opposite way. So any warp that you went over before, you'll go under it on the next pass back. Those two passes, the back and forth, are called a sequence. So two passes make a sequence. In order to speed this up a little bit, because it is you have your hands on the yarn every step of the way in tapestry. So it is a very, let's say, slow art. In order to speed it up a tiny bit, you can use what is called a shed stick. And a shed stick is just put under, over, under, over, under, over. You weave it through before you put on any weft. And the reason it's called a shed stick is because when you turn it on its side, this is a craft stick, so when you turn it on its fat side, it's going to open alternate strings or warp, and it's going to create a hole in here, and this hole is called a shed. So on one pass, you can put your warp right through, you can put your weft, sorry, right through this shed. You'll close it, and then you will need to pick up the alternate pass using a second shed stick for the way back, if that makes sense. So you've cut your work in half though, because you can open that shed very easily for one pass, close it, pick the second pass, throw your yarn through, and you've got one sequence there. Okay, now what happens when you are building your image or building your work from the bottom to the top. And think of it as building brick by brick by brick. You can only build your image this way in tapestry. Okay? So you can see that these sequences, if you count 1 seed, 2 seeds, 1 loop on this selvage or the edge is a sequence. And those weft yarns need to be beaten down to give a structure to your cloth. So we can do that with a tapestry fork, and you just kind of beat it down. It can be a lovely wooden fork, or you can use a dinner fork. And so we'll compact the weft on the warp there. And then another thing that you might wonder about is, how are we managing all this yarn? Because if you have more than one color, you're going to have a mess here if all those tails of yarn are just hanging out, aren't you? Yeah. So in order to manage those, you can use a tapestry bobbin, and that just goes, it's passed through the shed back and forth as you weave. Or you can make what is called a butterfly, and I'll show you how to do that. We'll be using this technique in class. So you have some weft yarn, you break off a bit, make a V with your fingers, pinch that yarn tail between the V there, stick out your ring finger and your thumb, and we're going to make a figure 8 between those two. Now this little tail is going to hang down. Don't worry about him anymore. Take your pinched tail and tie it around the waist of your figure 8. And we want that to be snug. So you see we have a little loop there. Now with your other free end, you can draw through, and if you haven't tied it too tight, this will be a way to manage your yarn. It works, trust me. We will be practicing that in class. All right, I think we have gone over some basic definitions, and I hope you enjoy class, and I hope you enjoy tapestry weaving, and I can't wait to meet you. Thank you. Bye.
Hi, I'm Buffy. I'm a weaver, and I'm going to be helping with the folk school class. I've been weaving for probably 6 years. Started down at the studio with Penny Wakefield, bless her heart. I love weaving on a floor loom, but I started on actually a tabletop loom, a handmade tabletop loom, and had a lot of fun making all kinds of things. This is one of the things I made. It's a Swedish lace dish towel. And actually I love weaving on a rigid heddle loom, and I wove this scarf on a rigid heddle loom, and it's just plain weave, but because of the warp, the wonderful ribbon warp, you can get all kinds of fun color, texture. Sky's the limit. This was also woven on a tabletop loom, a handmade tabletop loom, and it's alpaca, nice warm scarf. And this was woven on my floor loom, and it was fun to explore the different patterns in a plain weave, plus the color is very fun. And I love talking to people about fiber. You know if they have that gene, and you get very excited when somebody gets all excited. So it's going to be really fun to teach new weavers. So have fun.
I'm Claire Spahn. I'm going to help with the weaving class. I started weaving when I was in college, and it went by the wayside, and then I got my first rigid heddle loom and worked on that for a while, and then I had children, and then I met Buffy, my friend Buffy, and we went and took classes from Penny Wakefield up at the studio, and I just haven't turned back. I mean, just going like crazy. So my favorite loom probably is the rigid heddle, and this is something I just pulled off my loom. It's called Clasp Weave, and I was just working with color interaction and stuff, and that was kind of fun. It's just I don't even know what I'm going to do with it. There's that. But I also love the 4-harness looms, and Penny had taught me deflected double weave, and this is something you could do with that, and that was a lot of fun to learn. So you can see they're all different, with weaving. They're all different things. And then my passion is big pieces, and so I made my first big blanket, and it was just a bunch of colors, the Harrisville. That was a lot of fun, and so I want people to see that they can do big projects and to keep them warm that are practical. And I would like to learn more about art weaving, tapestry and this and that, but most of the time I just do floor loom stuff. So anyway, we'll have fun, and I'm hoping, I'm excited about new people trying it out, and yeah, we'll just play.
And I'm one of the weavers who will be working with you in the new Weavers Workshop. There are 4 of us total, and we're very excited to get started. I've been weaving for a few years now, 5 or 6 years, something in that neighborhood. I love to weave on small portable looms, and it's interesting because my other big fun is doing huge, kind of big epic pieces, but I do like weaving on little looms, on tapestry looms, and on rigid heddle looms. I like weaving cloth, but my real passion is weaving tapestry. And here's a little example of something that is still on the loom, simple little frame tapestry loom. And this is a rendition of a cave opening at Bandelier National Park in New Mexico, where I'm from. And then on the flip side, you can see I'm working on this little companion piece. These are just postcard size, 5x7, and that's a jackalope in progress. So the place I really have fun in weaving is making pictures with yarn, which I think is a lot of fun. In working with new weavers, the thing that I enjoy most is watching people just play with color and texture and kind of go nuts with the materials, and we hope that you'll all have some fun doing that in the workshop. Can't wait to meet you all and get started weaving. Okay, so this is one of the types of looms we'll be using in the workshop. This is a rigid heddle loom, and it's called a rigid heddle loom because of this little guy. The heddle reed is rigid. It's hard plastic. So in all of the looms, we're going to look at the things that are similar. So the warp is the vertical part, if you will. We're going to introduce weft, which goes horizontally. This front beam here is called the cloth beam, and the back beam here is called the warp beam. You can also call them the front and back beam, and we're going to know exactly what you're talking about. But this beam is taking up the fabric as you weave it. This beam has the warp on it and is letting warp go towards you as you weave. So you're going to be sitting right here and weaving on this section. The way that you get a shed, and a shed is the space that you put your yarn through. The way you get a shed on a rigid heddle loom is you raise the heddle, and then you create this little V-shaped space in here. That's the shed. That's where the weft, that is the weft to right, or crossways yarn, that's where the weft goes through, is through this shed. And then the opposite shed gets created by putting the heddle in the down position. You can see that created a triangle. So it's raising half the threads at a time, so you can go over, under, over, under, over, under. The last part I'll talk to you about with the rigid heddle loom, the advantage to a rigid heddle loom is it's very simple because the reed that spaces the yarn and the heddles that raise and lower the yarn are the same thing on a rigid heddle loom. That simplifies it and makes it a lot easier to weave on. So you want to remember these slots that the yarn go through, those are called heddles. The thing that spaces the yarn is called a reed, and you'll see that in the floor looms that we're going to work with. And the space that you put the yarn through, going back and forth, is called the shed. And all a loom really is, all the different types of looms that we're looking at, is a frame or a device that holds yarn under tension so that you can pass another set of yarns over and under these warp threads. That's the rigid heddle loom.
Hi, I'm Claire, and I'm going to show you the parts of a big floor loom, and that way you'll be familiar with the terminology when we, start weaving, and you'll be comfortable with that. This floor loom is a pretty standard loom. This one has, I believe, 8 harnesses, and these shafts, if you want to come closer, these shafts are what space the yarn that you're working with, and they also create the pattern. So it looks really complicated. It is not. You're just taking yarn under tension from the back. This is your cloth beam, this front beam down in here. And so when you start weaving, these, if you look down here, these are your foot pedals, and they push the different shafts up and down in a specific order. And you'll see your shed in here is where you're going to throw your yarn through, right in here. And each time I move my foot to a different pedal, you're going to have a different yarn. You're going to have different warp come up and down, and you're going to create a different pattern with this. And with an 8 harness, you've got 8 different different ways to lift yarn, and so you're going to have a really intricate pattern. And so this is the cloth beam down here, and this is called your beater, and this is what you're going to beat your yarns with. You're going to throw a yarn through, and then you're going to beat it forward to place it. And then this is the reed, and this is what's going to keep everything spaced evenly. And again, these are your shafts and these are your heddles that pull up the yarns. You can see the little holes in here where the yarns come through. And that's what's and every one of them pulls up a different yarn each time. So it's pretty basic, and it looks kind of scary, but it is not. I promise you, it's really easy. And once you get going, I'm telling you, within minutes you're going to be hooked, because it's just like magic. You push a pedal, and once you start seeing the patterns go, you won't want to stop, because it's crazy making. It's so cool. I don't know, I did a great job. I'll do better in person, people.
Hi, I'm Buffy, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the tools that you're going to use on the different looms. Some of these tools can be used on all the looms. Some are more specific to others. One of the most important tools you'll have is called a shuttle. And a shuttle is just a means of getting the yarn through the shed. And in Claire's talk on the floor loom, she talked about putting the yarn through the shed, and you do that with a shuttle. This is a stick shuttle. It's probably the oldest style. Can be used on backstrap looms, rigid heddle looms. You do a little figure 8 on these and wind the warp on here. You could use thicker yarn on these, but mostly we'll be talking about shuttles that are using fine to medium yarns. And these come in various sizes. I have one that's long, actually, and there's some really tiny ones. We also have boat shuttles, which are a little more expensive. And a boat shuttle, they're either open bottom, flat bottom. It's just a preference. And actually, the shuttles are really your preference. Shuttle needs a bobbin, and the bobbin is what we wind the fiber on. And these also will just take fine to medium fiber, and we wind the fiber on with a bobbin winder. And this is a cool old, looks like a Scandinavian one. This is made in Sweden, and there's a lot of variety in bobbin winders. But these are all manual. There are electric bobbin winders, but these are pretty handy, and you'll learn how to wind a bobbin, and then just slip it on with the yarn on it, slip it on, and then you'll hold that and you'll go through the shed of the loom. The shed was where the threads go up and down. Some looms are a little different. The tapestry looms don't have a beater necessarily. Well, you could beat it a little bit, but the fork will help beat your weft down. And actually, this is a beautiful old wooden one from Rasmussen Looms. I don't know that they're even made anymore, but you can use a table fork too as something very simple. That works. This is called a threading hook, and Claire showed you what the threads come through on the loom, and this is how you pull the threads through one at a time through the whole of that heddle to get your loom warped properly, threaded properly. And this is called a wavy stick. I've never used one, but after researching it a little bit, it looks like a lot of fun. You'll get a lot of different waves in your weaving, and it'll leave like some open areas and then some very compressed areas, and they're all waved. It looks very interesting. There's also a stick to hold your shed open. Say if you're on a tapestry loom, you can just put a flat stick in there and you can just twist it up to give yourself a shed for that. Anyway, and then the yarn, of course. The yarn, the sky's the limit. Someone set this up for tapestry, all the beautiful colors, and they're more uniform sizes, but really the sky is the limit. And on the rigid heddle looms, you can have a lot of fun with art yarn. I call this art yarn. There's ribbon, there's sari silk yarn, there's mohair, synthetic, wool, curly coarse spun yarn. It's really fun just to play with the colors. So I hope you enjoy. I know you're going to enjoy. So